Okay, hi, Professor Nadolny. This is my second discussion portfolio, this time without my face in the corner because I watched the last one and it was kind of weird. So hopefully this one looks a little bit better. But I want to start with week 4, and I chose the RPG design patterns one because I really liked reading about design patterns because RPGs are the games that I play the most, and so my response had to do with the do one of many quests. And one of the things that I sort of learned in the first 3 weeks that I tried to transfer to these next 3 weeks was that I do a lot better at these discussions when I just go ahead and apply it to the class I teach, which felt like it should have been intuitive, but I think I was trying to do too much. So in this, I chose this one because I actually have applied this to my class design. So I'm trying to do one of my multimodal communication classes as a game next fall. And so this is going to be the one of the quests that leads up to, or one of the design patterns that leads up to their major assignment for visual rhetorical analysis. And so in this one, as you can see, I kind of talked about situating the assignment so that it gives them the choice to self-select. And so the students who are a little bit better at designing and the actual creation of visuals can do like mini quests that lead up to them designing something for their major project. And the ones that are a little bit better at writing out their thoughts and are okay with the analysis part of that can lead up to the paper, which is the kind of traditional assignment. So the second reason I picked this is because I was able to kind of give an example of responding to another person's, even though I didn't have anyone respond to me, but Julie had come in with, I'm not going to play it, but Julie had come in with an example of a simulation that her training team did, and I just wanted to give her a little bit of encouragement, especially because I've tried to do a sim before and it crashed and burned. So I thought that her response about all of the things that were taken into account and all of the things that they did for that sim was just really good to hear from my perspective as someone who would like to try again and have a sim be successful. So moving over to the rubric for week 4, I think that I was able to address all the questions in depth this time in terms of actually answering the question of which one I would use, but I also gave an example of how that would play out in my class. So I think I was pretty successful at that. I did provide examples, but I don't think I went into the theory enough to give myself a 5 in terms of communication of ideas. So I'll give myself a 4.5 for that. I did provide feedback, but it was sort of baseline. So I'm giving myself a 4. I'm noticing that I'm going steadily down. Critical thinking and analysis, I would say still a 4 there. Grammar, don't think I had anything wrong. I didn't notice as I was rereading it, so I'll go ahead and give myself a 5 for week 4. So week 5, I chose this one because I thought, again, it was another example of where I really understood the reading and was able to give some good examples. But I also chose it because I had a lot of interaction. I didn't end up going back and talking to people, so I was kind of remiss in keeping the discussion going, but my classmates had a lot of input. So I will go ahead and play it for you. I'm sort of wondering whether or not this first one actually counts. So it's an example of a game that I created for
some anti-bullying curriculum, and Albie actually helped with this, so Albie, feel free to jump in and tell me anything I missed. But the game was built in Twine, and it was a um, narrative role-playing game, and the students were allowed to walk through certain scenarios and choose different things that they would do when encountering different situations of bullying. And the point of the game was to see if they could map the um, moral and ethical concepts that they had been learning to these specific school bullying situations. And so what we were looking for was not only the choices they picked to see if they were making ethical choices, but also um, we had them do this on screencast, so they recorded their um, gameplay. And we were looking to see the mouse clicks. So were they pausing over something and then clicking something else? So were they unsure, or were they, and a lot of them talked to themselves while they were doing it, if I remember Albie's assessment correctly. But were they just clicking what they thought we wanted to hear? Were they clicking back to see the definitions of things? There was a glossary choice on each page. So were they checking to see if they had certain ideas right, that sort of thing. So that's my first example of kind of a stealth assessment. Um, and then my game example is Kingdom Hearts. And so Kingdom Hearts is a fantasy role-playing game where you get to play as this character Sora, and you travel to different Disney worlds, and you have to lock each world so that the Heartless can't get to it. The Heartless are the villains in the game. So in the game, you actually have Donald and Goofy as your companions, but each world you go to, you're allowed to have the main character of that particular Disney movie as one of your companions too. So it's always three of you. But if you're watching someone play the game, what you can kind of tell critical thinking and problem solving based on how they're playing. So if I'm playing the Tarzan world and I've still got just Donald and Goofy as my main characters, maybe I'm a beginning player, maybe I'm not really thinking about how the best way to beat that level is, but if I'm switching out, say, Goofy for Tarzan, then I'm thinking more in terms of the strategy of beating that level.
Okay, so that was my response for this week, and I think kind of strength of this is I started. In some weeks, I would sort of try and make gaming responses strictly, and some weeks I tried to make classroom responses only. And so I think this week, with the kind of um, use of both of those examples, it was me trying to kind of work through those. And again, I had a lot of response. Albie actually came in and built on a little bit of what I was talking about in terms of the game that we created. So that was really nice to have her input to give a little bit more context um, and a little more clarification as to what we were doing. So that was great. If we go over to the rubric and scroll back up to the top, again, I think this one how I don't know how in depth I went. So I'm gonna give myself a 4.5. I did have the two examples, but I don't know how in depth in terms of the actual theory of stealth assessment I went. So I'll just go with that. I'm giving myself I give myself a 5. No, I'll give myself a 4.5. Again, for that, I just remembered that I didn't actually bring up the text. So I've really got to work on that. I think that's sort of my kryptonite is actually incorporating sources. Interaction with peers. Now for this week, and I don't know if this is the way we're supposed to do it, but I did interact with peers on other slides, just not that one, so maybe a 4.5 again. We'll go with a 4. We'll go with a 4 there. But I think I did do some good critical thinking, so I'll do 4.5 on that one. And again, I well, I didn't write anything out, but I think my ideas had a clear sequence, and my speech was grammatically correct. So I'll give myself a 5 there. Okay, week 6. So I went with game assessment again. I apparently really like talking about assessment, but I chose this slide because, glory hallelujah, I finally remembered to bring in sources, and I brought in 3 with this one, so I'm quite happy with this response. But I talk about stealth assessment and sort of my history of using games in the classroom, and how I really don't like interfering with gameplay. I like to let the students play without me hovering over them, or without me having to interject in order to do some sort of assessment so that they can continue. And I use the example of when I would do living board games at when I taught middle school, and how they would just get really annoyed when I would pop in with questions. And so their annoyance has kind of traumatized me, and I guess I don't like to interrupt the flow of the classroom in order to do sorts of assessment. But also, I like being able to go back and look at their gameplay rather than having to watch them play as they're doing it. And I think that allows them a little bit of freedom to explore and maneuver without having to worry as much. Um, but um, but I did pick this one just because I was able to. I mean, for this one, I just cited shoot and key for stealth assessment, but I did bring in some stuff that the video talks about, and I also brought in an issue that I think that's Roop et al. Brings, and um, my response was sort of in very condensed response to them. So that was why I picked this one. Now this one is another week where I didn't. I had response to mine, but I didn't necessarily respond to mine. I actually responded to 2 others when we talked a little bit about Think Aloud protocols. So I responded to that, and then I also responded to um, Sarah in terms of her issues with survey and student motivation for answering certain questions. So I did have more interaction on this one too. So I think week 6 is kind of where I started remembering how to, or getting the hang of this. It took me 6 weeks, but I did get there. So in terms of the rubric for this one, I think I went into enough depth this time, so I'm gonna go ahead and give a 5. I'm still giving myself a 4.5 for communication of ideas. I think I could have actually explained a little bit more in terms of how my response connected to the Roop et al. Article. So I'll give myself that for that one. I think my responses did build on my peers' questions and responses, but not enough to give myself a 5, so I'll give myself a 4.5 there. However, critical thinking and analysis, I think I went into enough depth again, so I'll go ahead and do a 5 for that, and a 5 for mechanics, because I didn't notice any major typos or grammar errors. So those are my scores for week 6.